Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Yuba Probation Podcast, a brand new podcast series highlighting the men and women who work at the Yuba County Probation Department and their efforts to make Yuba County a better place through some of the initiatives we have here at the department. I'm Senior Deputy Probation Officer Jared Reed, and today I'm honored to be joined by our chief, Jim Arnold, who's been kind enough to be the guinea pig for this brand new podcast series. How you doing today, Chief?
I'm doing great. Thank you, Jared. Thank you for having me.
Hey, thank you for being here.
Yeah, absolutely. This is good stuff. I appreciate it.
A little nervous about being the first?
Not really. This is good. This is good stuff. This is what we talk about. We talk about being creative in probation, right? Create things that's going to make our community better, make us more successful in what we do. And so I'm very proud of you creating the podcast. And I know our coins mean a lot to our folks. And so I'd like to give you a coin this morning for being so creative and launching our new podcast.
Thank you, Chief. I really do appreciate it. For those that don't know, these little challenge coins do mean a lot to us. I know other officers in the department display them. I display them on my desk as well. It truly is an honor. But I'm not going to take all the credit for this podcast. It actually came out of an adult unit meeting back in October. When someone just randomly, while we were talking about a radio spot that we had done for an event we were doing, said, we should just do a podcast. And next thing I know, Stephanie Bealey, who was my supervisor, came in the office, said, I think you should give it a shot, find out what it would take. And 6 months or so later, 5 months or so later, here we are with our very first podcast. It is exciting, a little bit scary.
It's good stuff.
It is good stuff. Yeah. Speaking of Stephanie, she's who made this wonderful backdrop that we're using here, this beautiful American flag sign. And I'm going to let you talk a little bit about the badges.
So Stephanie approached us. Stephanie, who's the supervisor in our adult unit, approached me some time back ago, and she wanted to do something to kind of talk about our region approach in our new juvenile hall being built. And so she asked if she could approach Sutter, Colusa, and Yuba counties and get some of the badges that were lined to be destroyed and get those badges and make them the stars on a flag. And so this is a absolutely beautiful piece of art. Very proud of Stephanie putting this together. And it will be displayed in our new juvenile hall once it's completed.
Yeah, it is absolutely gorgeous. I know the video will not do it proper justice. And I know probably on the cameras it's hard to see, but there are actually 50 badges there, and they are representing all three of those counties, including, I'm looking here, I can see Sutter County gave us a supervising probation officer badge too, which is kind of cool, a little different. Actually, looks like they maybe gave us a couple of them. So how long until that brand new juvenile hall?
Right now, it's anticipated May of 23 is when we'll be able to occupy.
Okay, and when did this project start?
Almost 7.5, almost 8, maybe closer to 8 years ago.
8 years. 8 years from concept to hopefully, or 9 years if you had another year. Yeah. 9 years from concept to actual occupancy.
It's been a long process.
Been a lot of hurdles to that project. Mm-hmm. How many different chiefs have there been involved in this project during that time?
I think Colusa might be on their third chief, and Sutter is either on their third or fourth chief since we started the project. So I'm kind of the last man standing from the beginning.
The last man standing.
Yeah.
You've made it. You've persisted, sir. Yeah. Congratulations.
Yeah, right? Yeah.
When did you become chief probation officer here in Yuba County?
2009.
2009.
Yes.
So 13 years of guiding the ship here.
Yeah, close to 13 years now, yes.
Okay. And how many chiefs statewide have there been?
Since I've become chief, have maybe retired?
Yeah, come and gone. And
I guess would be 80, maybe upwards of 100 chiefs have come and retired since I became chief. Some, as I mentioned, multiple chiefs in the same county. So yeah, I would say upwards of maybe 100.
Yeah. There's only 59 of you in the entire state, correct?
That's right.
Yeah, so that's a decent amount of turnover in just 13 years if you think about it.
Yeah, and some were ready to retire, and it's just their time was there to retire, and others left possibly because of a massive legislative change. And I think sometimes chiefs look at legislative change as an opportunity for someone new to come in and lead with fresh ideas and whatnot. And AB 109 was a prime example. I think when AB 109 hit, which is almost a foreign word to us anymore, a lot of chiefs said, you know what, this needs a new fresh of eyes, and so let's get new chiefs in here to tackle on that massive legislation.
Explain AB 109 a little bit more and some of the challenges that did create.
Well, we could spend a whole podcast explaining it, but in a nutshell, it took place in 2011, and the state gave us, through parole, a large percentage of their responsibilities was pushed back onto the locals. Mm-hmm. The challenge is, I think for us, our department took it in stride. Our folks love a challenge, and they realize it was a good change, and they're willing to get in after it. I think the challenge kind of with me came because as a fairly newer chief, and a lot of staff kind of looked at it as if this was my change. And it took a little while to flesh that out and for them, everybody to realize, no, this is statewide legislative change, not Jim Arnold's change.
Yeah. You probably would have preferred 2 years in as a chief, still relatively, finding your footing, to not have to completely rearrange all of what we do for supervision for the most part. I mean, it created whole brand new processes and everything. Can you think of a more impactful legislative change, in the history of criminal justice?
No, it's the biggest change in the state of California has ever had in the criminal justice system.
Yeah. And it's, forgive me if I'm wrong, as far as I know, in my communications with officers in other states, like when we're transferring offenders, it still is mostly just a California thing. I don't believe other states have taken on supervision at the community level like that.
Not as big as we did it, no.
Okay. I'm sure you'll agree with me. Working at the juvenile hall is the best way to cut your teeth in the probation field.
There is no better way. I enjoyed my whole experience over there. It taught me a lot about the criminal justice system. It taught me about behavior. It taught me how to build relationships with clients, meaning our youth, but at the same time their families. I cannot tell or express enough what institutions did for me in my career and how much I respect for our folks that work in our institutions. It is a different environment, and it takes really outstanding people to work over there. We have outstanding people out there.
I started also in the hall, and I definitely agree with everything you just said. A lot of lessons are learned inside that juvenile hall. What was the daily population like when you started at that hall?
It was common to be in the 50s, and I remember coming in multiple times and being in the 70s and having kids double bunked. And it was common to have at least a dozen, maybe to 15 kids penning the youth authority, CYA at that time, later called DJJ, and now it's us. But yeah, I saw it as high in the mid 70s.
Gotcha. Which just an absolute nightmare for staff to mitigate these issues.
It was crazy. So it teaches you how to build relationships,
yes,
and teaches you how to deal with behaviors and yeah.
Right. You brought up DJJ's closing. For those that aren't following the conversation, that's basically state prison for children. It's now going to be at our juvenile hall. So what kind of struggles or challenges you see that facing our department?
I don't think we necessarily have struggles. The challenges are just creating environments that could best serve that population. I think we have a great campus where we could accomplish that. It's just a matter of building out some more infrastructure to provide different levels of security for the kids coming in. But I think, again, typical Yuba County probation, people rising up to the challenge and look forward to the challenge. And so we're going to do really well with it.
Was it a convenience that we're building a brand new hall as you're getting the news, or was it great, thank you for this piece of news after we've already had the architects finish all the plans?
Yeah. Let's go with the
little both.
Yeah, it'd have been nice to know this was coming down the pike prior to us actually starting the build with the institution. Maybe be able to do a couple extra things with it, but we're not in that boat. And luckily for us, we have a secured housing unit that was a part of the build back in 2000, and so we'll be able to utilize that as well, which will really help us.
Okay. I know that a large chunk of your career was spent as the deputy superintendent at our Camp Singer program. In fact, I know that you were one of the architects of the Camp Singer program. So I'd like to give you an opportunity to talk all you want about the Camp Singer program, how important it is. I'm assuming that it's still near and dear to your heart, knowing you as well as I do. What would you like to tell people about Camp Singer?
Well, so when I got hired as a deputy superintendent, because I lose track of time now, I believe around 2000. 99 or 2000, I believe, is when I got hired as deputy superintendent to run what was going to be the Camp Singer Youth Guidance Center. And at that time, when I went over there, it was basically just dirt. So the chief and the superintendent at the time designed the building, had the concept of what we were going to do, and then they tasked me going out and actually writing the program. And it is very dear to me. I have a lot of pride in that program. I think that program has changed many lives, and I think it will continue to change lives, not only here, but it's a regional program as well. It serves a lot of kids in the North region, and it has had huge impacts in our community. And I take quite a bit of pride in that program.
How important is not only like Camp Singer and the programs it provides, but just juvenile interventions early on in our community? How important is that?
It's extremely important. It's critical to be aggressive with intervening with some of our troubled youth early on. And one of the things that the camp provided us was not only were we providing services to the minors in the camp, but we're providing services to their younger siblings, which really helped maybe stop the younger siblings from going down the path that maybe their older sibling was. We also have the PASS program, Probation and School Success, which is an intervention program on our school campuses, which also helps with that as well. Intervening early on and identifying some kids that might be having some struggles and giving them the sources and resources and the services that they need to be successful.
No, it's truly definitely has an impact to get them young for sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah, keep them out of the system, hopefully. So tell me more about you as a person. What kind of hobbies do you have outside of just being a chief probation officer?
So hobby-wise, I really enjoy hunting and fishing. I don't fish as much as I used to after my kids were born. I kind of started having to give up one of those two things, and I chose to keep hunting. And so my main release, if you would, is away from my family, is hunting. So I do a lot of my hunting with my son, which is special for me as well. So I don't have a lot of necessarily hobbies per se, besides my family. But those are, hunting could be a year-round thing, planning your hunts and researching your hunts and getting maps and doing all that. So I really enjoy that.
Gotcha, kind of getting into the philosophy and the science of it is important to you too.
Absolutely.
Yeah, you were telling me earlier that your son just absolutely creamed the ducks this year.
He did.
So if you're listening, I'm going to find you, younger Arnold, and you can show me where to go slay the ducks next year. So did you hunt growing up?
No. I didn't start hunting until I hunted a little tiny bit in high school. I didn't really start hunting until probably around 2021 is when my father-in-law introduced it to me, and it took off from there. And he was a great mentor for me when it came to that. Yeah.
Gotcha. So it sounds like hunting between your son and father-in-law is definitely a family sort of occasion for you. Absolutely. Despite the also wanting to go out and do it on your own occasionally. Yeah. It definitely, family's very important to you.
Yeah, and hunting is very important to us. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah.
Well, it's good to have hobbies together. Kind of impact has being the chief had on your family?
It's stressful. I mean, and I've told a lot of folks, staff members that have expressed maybe a desire to be a chief, that being a chief puts a lot of pressure and stress on your family. And you need to be aware of that. And it's luckily for me, I have a family that's very understanding. They understand that sometimes when I come home, maybe being quiet is good. And I think I told you one time there was a situation. My son played a lot of baseball when he was young, and so much so that we actually built a batting cage in the backyard. And it was during Ep.1, and I go home, and he wants to hit, and the hitting wasn't going exactly as planned, and I kind of got angry and got a little vocal, and I realized when I was leaving the batting cage, I called it Ep.1 him because the stress and the pressure from that, I kind of took it out of him. So that's an example of the stress of being a chief that we have to be aware of and how it can affect our families. And luckily for me, I have the world's greatest family.
Yeah. I think everyone would understand being just a little bit stressed. You have employees like me to deal with everything.
Yeah, come on, Reed, you're good.
How's it feel to be probably the first chief in the entire state brave enough to authorize a podcast?
I don't know if another department has done it. I know that CPOC has talked about it, but this is it, man. This is what we talk about: being creative, and we always talk that you have a mission statement and you have a vision and everything. But in reality, if you want to really make it simple. For us, what we talk about is treat people good, and that means treat clients good and treat your staff good and the people you work with and outside agencies. Be honest, and what that means is that when you make a mistake, we can fix it. Just be honest about it. And then the last one, be creative. And we want our folks to be creative, and it doesn't matter if it's building out a podcast or it's simple as passing out water on the corner on hot days. Just be creative and do something. Yeah. And we take great pride in that.
Just from a structural standpoint for the department, what do you think is more important? Ideas that come from the top and filter down, or ideas that actually well up from line staff and build from there?
Line staff.
Line staff?
It takes ownership. I mean, and it's fun to watch people build a program or create something and own it. And that's why those types of programs can be very successful, is when you own it. If it's just coming down from the top, pushing it down to line staff saying we want to do this, and people don't really want to buy into it or have ownership, it could be a struggle. But I've been approached many times with ideas, and I get excited about it and let's go. And even sometimes knowing that maybe that idea won't be successful, but go try it. Let's see what happens. And I learned that working in the camp. With staff members that want to always do things in the camp and make it better, and let them go. Let your people do their job, and they will do a great job.
Okay. Definitely sounds like a good management philosophy. So I see that you brought a couple books with you today. I know that you've brought these books up in numerous meetings. I'm actually have read that top one that you brought there, and I'm in the middle of reading that bottom one you got. So I'm going to give you a little bit of opportunity. What do you do to study your craft of leadership, and what is like your leadership philosophy?
I don't know, and that'd be a great question to ask you or ask staff. What is my philosophy? I don't know if I necessarily have a philosophy. I know what I believe in. And what I believe in is that we have to build a culture that makes the employees first, and it makes their families first. And we always talk about being a family first department, and that's what we are. I've always said if employees are not happy at home and they're not taking care of their home, then they're not going to be happy here, and they're not going to be taking care of stuff here. And so I think there has to be this balance, and we have to have an environment here where staff know that their family always comes first. But also what's critical to us and who we are is being a team. And anytime I push something out to staff through an email or whatnot, it always talks about team, and it always says our team. And it says us. It never says I, me. It's we, us, our, and it's always based off a team. And you said that you might ask about books, and you go to trainings and everybody talks about, read this book, the top 5 characteristics of a great leader, and those are all good things. I'm not saying they're not, but by far and away, the best leadership book I've ever read is called Legacy by James Kerr. And what it is, it's about the All Blacks, which is a rugby team out of New Zealand. And they were at one upon a time possibly the worst professional organization in the world, and how they became possibly the greatest professional organization in the world. And it talks about culture, it talks about being a team, and how you create that. And it's a phenomenal book. And I know there's many people in our department that have read it. I've given it to a lot of people outside of our department. And it's a great read. It's a great read if you're a sports fan. It's a great read if you just want to learn about how to build culture and how to build a team and character and integrity, ethics. And it's basically our playbook. If people want to know about Yuba County Probation and what we're trying to accomplish and how we accomplish it, you read the book Legacy, and you'll find out. And then recently I actually read Leadership Strategy and Tactics by Jocko Willink, who's an ex-Navy SEAL. And why I really love this book and recommend this book is that it really validates legacy. It really talks about how you build a culture and how the team atmosphere within that culture is number one. And the player or the soldier or the PO is the priority. If they're okay and they're doing well emotionally and physically, then your clients are going to do well. It's funny, when I worked at the camp, I never left the camp in the evenings asking myself, are the youth doing well? I asked myself, are the staff doing well? And if I knew I can answer yes, then I knew the kids were doing well. So, yeah.
I would definitely say from day one, every meeting, we're a family, but more importantly, take care of your family first. And I know I've felt that from you guys. I had a son that had medical issues when he was born, and one of the first texts that I got was from you. The next one came from the assistant chief, my program managers, my supervisors, everyone checked in. And it's, I know that I'm lucky enough to work at a department that has that level of support, because there are other departments where the chief doesn't have the personal cell phone numbers of any of his DPOs, much less is texting them at like 11 o'clock at night. Hey, everything good? You need anything? So that was fantastic. If anyone out there doesn't know who the All Blacks from New Zealand are, when you're done watching this YouTube video, type in the word Haka, Haka, and they're going to come up. And it is the coolest thing in sports. I'm sure you'll agree. There's not a pregame ritual cooler than a New Zealand Haka.
Yep, I agree. And there's other, the University of Hawaii does it. Their football team does it before kickoff, and I've been there to see that, and it's chilling. It's awesome.
Yeah, truly amazing, and just truly speaks to not only the incorporation of their culture into their athletics, but then developing that culture before every game. Their captain leads it. They stare right at the other team and do it. It's truly an amazing experience. It'd be cool to see live.
Yeah, absolutely.
I remember in the Olympics a few years ago, the New Zealand basketball team did it before playing Team USA. And, multi-million-dollar Team USA professional athletes just wide-eyed, like, what are we about to play? Like, and I'm sure they killed New Zealand, but still, it was like, oh, these guys mean some business here.
Yeah, good stuff.
Absolutely. So you've talked a lot about in meetings and stuff like that about Jocko Willink and the Navy SEALs. What other things have you gotten out of Jocko Willink or just Navy SEAL tactics before? I know you told me that they're an organization that you truly admire.
I think the number one thing is I'm repeating myself now, just how they work together as a team, and they trust one another, they believe in one another, they support one another, but they also hold one another accountable. And that's also a big thing, right? If I want to make Jarrett Reed a better officer, then I need to hold you accountable, and I need to be honest with you about you. And I think that's extremely important. And I think that's what we try to do here at our department. And we preach that message to all the managers here, is that if you want to see people be successful, then you need to be honest with them. You need to tell them where they're at. That's critical. And I think the Navy SEALs do an excellent job with that.
Yeah. Speaking of accountability, you asked me this question once in a supervising interview. I want to hear your answer. What's worse for a department, an underperforming employee or a employee who goes around just saying bad things about management and coworkers?
The latter, absolutely. I think underperforming employees, we could do everything in our power to bring up their performance. We could help train them. We could do a lot of things. We can mentor them. But when you have employees that simply want to go against our culture, it's crippling to our department.
Okay. What advice would you give a young PO or a young JCO right now, particularly in this atmosphere?
Well, to be successful or like progress in a department, or it seems simple, right? Just do a good job. But in reality, if you just come to work on time and you leave on time and you just simply worry about yourself and do your job, you'll automatically separate yourself from a lot of people if you do those things. I think one of the things through my career that I've seen that's really tripped people up that want to progress in our culture is when they start concerning themselves with what the managers or their supervisors are doing behind closed doors. And they start creating perceptions in their head about what actually is being done. And through my experience, 98+% of the time, their perceptions are wrong. And it derails them because they act off their perceptions. And their perceptions simply aren't very accurate. And it derails them instead of just do your job. It's funny because I think I've told you before, the best evaluation I ever got when I was a deputy probation officer, and I got a really good evaluation to the point I'm like, wow, this is unbelievable. And I asked the manager why. I still have my struggles and whatnot. And he goes, well, because you're never in my office and you just do your job.
Just do your job.
And he goes, that's really kind of unheard of. Right. And so that's the advice. Just do your job. And don't worry about the people around you. Don't worry about what you think the chief is doing or the managers are doing, because you're probably going to guess wrong. And then you're going to act off wrong information or wrong perception, and you're going to struggle. So that would be the best advice I could give. That'd be the advice I give to my own kids. The other thing is figure out a way to separate yourself. My daughter is now working for Ping in Phoenix. It's a huge company. And the first thing I told her is try to figure out a way to separate yourself, and you get noticed.
Gotcha. We're running short on time, but I want to give you the opportunity to explain the 20-60-20 rule.
20-60-20, through my experience being a manager, is that when you take a team, you take an agency, and this is just me, this is my opinion. It's not a fact. It's just my opinion. Is that 20% of the department will be elites. They'll just absolutely do their job. They crush it. They just get after it. 60% come in, they do their job, and they go home. And then 20% at the bottom are the ones that cause all your issues. And you have to ask yourself sometimes as an employee where you're at. Are you at the top 20? Are you in the middle 60 or the bottom 20? Obviously, the top 20, if you want to, if you have higher aspirations, is great. That 60 is also great, because without that 60, we don't survive. And there's nothing wrong with just wanting to come to work and do your job and go home. We have to have that to survive. But if you're in that bottom 20, you need to take an inward look at yourself. Yeah. That's what that means.
How to figure out how to get out of that bottom 20.
And that's just me. Yeah. That's not, they didn't read that in a book or anything like that. But after 20 plus years being a manager, I'm pretty confident in that statement.
Pretty confident in that model. All right. I'd like to thank you for being brave enough to come on the initial podcast and give this a run. I hope everyone out there has enjoyed our conversation. Give me a handshake for coming. Appreciate it, sir. Before we go, I would like to announce to the community out there, come see us at the Bach-Eye Festival. We're going to be at the Yuba County Library from 10 to 12 on March 5th. Doing some kid games. So if you come out to enjoy the parade, come by the Yuba County Library and come hang out, meet some of our officers. We also are going to be in local schools this week doing Read Across America. A few community schools out in Allfirst, and I know that Veronica, our community liaison, is working on getting us into a few more schools. Get to do it actually live in person this year, hopefully, which will be fantastic. With that in mind, thank you guys for listening, watching, however it is you viewed this, and appreciate you guys giving us a chance.
Thanks, Jared.